You're listening to Empire by Design, episode 69. Hey, I'm Katie White, coach, consultant, transformation facilitator, action taker, empire builder, and this is Empire by Design. In this show, we're building empires, we're sharing stories, and we're getting up close and personal on the strategies that make an empire in today's online world. Get all the show notes, past episodes and more at katiewyatt.me. For now, settle in for the ride. Welcome back to our Should I Start a Podcast Summer Series. If you're starting here, please pause and go back to part 1, episode number 68, and begin at the beginning. Why? In this series, we are answering the question, should I start a podcast? And we're doing that by sharing the real journey of entrepreneur Anna Chisholm, host of the Big Impact podcast. Anna did my podcasting course, PodWell, and we began recording this series right at the start of her journey. So you will hear the challenges, inspirations, questions, and highlights of a real, relatable entrepreneur as she goes through the program and creates a podcast that is going to grow her audience and brand for the very first time. So let's get into the next installment of Should I Start a Podcast with Anna Chisholm. This summer series is brought to you by PodWell, the course that helps entrepreneurs like you gain more attention, more audience, authority, and advocates with a podcast. You can read all about it and sign up at www.podcastempires.com/join PodWell. Welcome back, Anna Chisholm, to our new podcaster series. How are you?
I'm good, Katie White. How are you?
I'm really good and excited to talk to you again. We were just trying to work out where you'd been up to when we spoke last, and you had, I think, recorded a couple of episodes, so your first one or two, and we talked a little bit about launching. What else have you been up to lately?
I am in, I guess, the process of polishing them all. So I think I've got 7 under my belt at the moment, which is awesome. So I'm just trying to, I guess, put them all on my website. I'm going to be self-hosting on my site for the time being.
Yep.
So just in the process of polishing all that, doing the show notes that go with them, getting people's like pictures that go with it, which has actually been really fun, like collecting kind of the image that will go with it. So that's been good. And I'm also really in the middle of trying to, I guess, find some really interesting and inspiring plant-based families or real life families, because that, you know, as we've talked about before, that'll be, I think, every 4th episode of the podcast to interview someone who's already plant-based or kind of on their way to being plant-based. And so I'm, really enjoying connecting with some plant-based families who are keen to jump on and connect with me. So that's been fun.
Awesome. And have you found some?
I have. So I've done 1 interview and I've got 2 more lined up, which is awesome.
Brilliant.
So, yeah.
Oh, I'm really keen to hear how those go. So maybe we'll have to check in again once you've done a couple of those, and we'll talk about how different that is to talking to kind of someone that I suppose is a little bit more familiar with being on the, you know, talking about what they do.
Yes, yeah, definitely. No, they'll be very different. So I'm looking forward to a good mix, really.
Yeah. And so, look, I wanted today, because we're like at episode 3, I thought it might be worth just reflecting back on a couple of things whilst the memories are still fresh. So I wanted to ask you, like, before, and, you know, you've started podcasting even though you haven't launched yet, but I know that you wanted to do it for a while, like it's really been boiling and bubbling up around for a while. So tell me, like, what do you think really stopped you from starting sooner or earlier?
Oh, that's a really good question. And I've kind of thought a lot about this. I think for me, the thing that blocked me was I wasn't 100% clear on my business model, or kind of the the places that I wanted to take my business. You know, being in the first, I guess, year or 18 months of business, it's sort of, you're sort of fumbling your way around a bit, I guess, at first, and seeing what you like and what your target market likes and all those sorts of things. And I think now that I've found the main components of my business and what I really enjoy in my business, once I got clear on that, I really started to look at, okay, what's going to spark more interest in those areas of my business, or what's going to complement those things, I guess. So I would say, yeah, the biggest block was definitely not being clear myself on what were the main components of my business.
Oh, that's really interesting. It's funny, because I started podcasting even before I'd started the business, but I knew that the area of wellness and business was a place I was really interested in. So it kind of felt okay. But what's really interesting is that you've referred to that sort of first 12 to 18 months. And I'm in my first 12 to 18 months of my business, and I'm going through a podcast rebrand.
Ah,
So,
cool.
yeah. So, I mean, I've loved everything I've created so far, but it's interesting, I think I'm at a similar point to you where you've had that time to try lots of different things and you've got much more clarity on what's next in your business. And so I want the podcast to reflect that evolution as well. So, I think it's a thing.
I think it might be. Are you allowed to tell us any secrets about your?
Oh, look, I would if I had anything to tell you. It's all kind of I'm playing around with names basically, but I want it to be more like it's probably going to move to a more broad than just focusing on wellness entrepreneurs. And look, to be honest, my podcast interviews people far and wide beyond
Mm.
wellness already, but I want to move it to be just more discussions, not just about people's businesses, but also about their life and the role of the business in their life. So I don't know, I'm kind of
Awesome.
toying with it. There's a lot going on in my business at the moment, a lot of change. So I'm just letting it percolate.
I love it. Oh, you heard it here, folks. It's all changing up.
Yeah, by the time we publish this, who knows? It might already
Yeah.
be decided, but I don't know. So another question then is like, what now that you're close to launching, and it sounds like, everything's coming together brilliantly, and you haven't had too many hiccups on the journey, but do you have any fears around the launching process?
Oh, that's a good question. Not really. I'm mainly excited. Obviously my tech fears come in a little bit. My husband's obviously on board with that and helping me through that. Fears about launching. No, I'm pretty brave in terms of getting out there and trying new things and kind of putting my thing out there. So I'm not that concerned about that. I guess the long-term question or query for me is, will this make any difference in my business? And I guess until you go through it yourself, it's hard to see whether that works. I mean, I know you and I have talked a little bit about this, and that's something you really promote in teaching podcasts, is that it does kind of take your business to the next level. But I guess until I experience that, that's an ongoing question. I guess a fear for me is this just another thing that I'm going to try and isn't going to work, or is this going to be something that sticks?
Mm. Yeah, okay. No, I think that's really, I think it's a really sensible thing to be cognizant of, really. Like, I mean, there's obviously there's no guarantees, but I think the process of podcasting, because you're connecting with so many influencers and people that you admire, and talking to them, even that in itself, I think up levels your mindset. Like, because you're
Mm,
having suddenly talking to these people that you've probably admired from afar, but
mm,
never sat down and had a long form conversation with. So I think that almost just doing that is part of the process and part of the up leveling, and then you'll, put it out there, and you're suddenly that's not just going to be about you and the content. There's going to be a community that is listening to that content. I was talking to one of my podcasters today, who she's about 3 episodes in terms of what's live, and she said she'd got her first email from somebody who
cool.
had said, I really loved, she had an episode on EFT, or emotional freedom technique, and they said, I've been in a really tough place in my life, and I've decided I'm going to try this tapping thing based on listening. And we were like, that's what it's about. It's not even about the numbers, but it's about knowing that suddenly you're creating this content that's touching people and affecting people, and will go on to do so because it's going to exist, in an archive for a long time. So
that's very true. And I think I can't remember, we talked about this last time, but for me, I think podcasting seems to, as I said, I have no control over what impact it's going to have on my business, but I find even the creating content this way comes so much easier to me than blogging. Like I don't find writing that easy. I don't mind doing it, but it's not something that I would just sit. Some people are great at doing that, and that's the way they are creative and get kind of their message out there. But that was never the way for me. So I think having found something that comes so naturally to me I probably boosted my confidence, I would say, even in my business and just in life, that I have found something that doesn't feel like work, really, that it just feels like I'm having cool conversations with really interesting people. So that in itself has been a massive bonus to me.
And I think it's really important to have things like that in our business. Like, I feel like even if I didn't have a business, I'd still podcast because I have so much fun doing it, and it's such a high to have the conversations with people and produce something that goes out into the world. Like it just feels amazing. So I think that's really important, and you should hold on to that feeling because that's pretty special.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. And so, launching, what are you hoping for when you launch? Like, what would a perfect launch feel like?
That's a really tough question. Do you know what? This sounds a bit silly again, but getting something, just like you just said then, like getting something out there, something that I've produced that I've loved doing, is probably going to satisfy me quite a lot without even knowing if anybody's listening. But I think making sure people are aware of what I'm doing, getting people excited, and having people, I think, subscribe, obviously, but subscribe knowing that people want to be listening to the information that I'm putting out each week. So whether that's that it's someone who's really keen to start eating more plant-based and wants to hear from real-life families in terms of how they implement that and what the struggles are and what the wins are and those sorts of things, or for people like myself who, this sounds a bit cliche, but as a busy mum and I guess as a working mum, I love that. I guess I love listening to podcasts because it's an easy way for me to listen to stuff and consume content while I'm on the go, while I'm out for a walk or dropping the kids off or whatever that might be. So I guess for me to provide that information and inspiration for other people like me who are just busy but really looking for extra inspiration around this kind of wellness and health topic will be really satisfying for me. So I guess the subscription rate will reflect that and show me that I am actually providing useful content for people.
Beautiful. And so tell me, have you, in the episodes that you've recorded so far, have you thought about in your intros and outros of including like a call to action? Are you promoting anything? Like what do those first episodes look like?
So I think in all of the outros, I've made sure to, I guess the call to action is for people to subscribe and to rate and review, because I think, and tell me if I'm wrong here, especially initially, that's what you want people to do. Like that's going to help your podcast become more, I don't know, people to be more engaged and it to be out there and for more people to be seeing it, more eyes on it. And from there, I think then I might change what the call to action might be, whether that's, one thing I do talk about with the guests is that the last question I always ask them and finish off the podcast with is what's one, small action step that they would encourage people to take right now to make a big impact on their health. And I think leading on from that, one thing that I will ask listeners to do is to join our smoothie group, because that's the one thing that I found really useful when I was trying to get my health back on track. And I know a lot of other people have kind of said the same thing. So I think encouraging people to take that first step with their health will probably be, the call to action will probably be to join the smoothie group.
Yeah. Beautiful. And yes, the subscribe, rate and review is exactly what we all want as podcasters, to get our podcast higher up the charts, in front of more people in iTunes. I also think that it's good to be reminding people in places other than the podcast how to subscribe, rate and review. So whether you do it in your email newsletter or in the Facebook group every now and then, because often, when we're listening to a podcast, we're not in a place where it's easy to just go and rate and review.
Yeah.
But I think bringing people to the Facebook group is a really good idea. And I now can't remember if we talked about this in our last call or if you and I were talking about it offline, about the role that your Facebook group will play. And I think we had talked about, should the name of the Facebook group change to reflect that it is, it is the community base for the podcast, as well as being the place where you run your regular smoothie challenge. What are your thoughts? Have you gotten any further with that?
No, I'm still at the same uncertain place. And I think we did talk about this a little bit offline, is that I do like the idea of having a community for the podcast. But on the flip side of that, I really love the small kind of niche aspect of just having the group as a smoothie group and as, I guess, building that community around that, and obviously discussing in the group about things other than smoothies, about this other small steps that people can take to better their health. So I guess for me at the moment, it's probably around just engaging people around that topic in general and not just smoothies, especially on either side of the actual 21 days that the challenge is taking place. So to get that kind of conversation moving around what other things people can do or tips and tricks about, small steps to better health.
And, if you did decide to change the name of the Facebook group, and it's totally up to you whether you do that, but you have said a couple of times these small steps, and I know your podcast is called Big Impact. So I keep hearing you say like one small thing to big impact, or small steps to big impact, or so that might be, it just might be a tagline you put in your cover art, or but anyway, just wanted to let you know that's sort of something I kept hearing from the way you talked about it.
Oh, cool. I'll have to write that down.
Awesome. Well,
genius moments come when you don't have a pen, don't they?
And we're recording this, so
that's true.
We've got it forever. Awesome. Well, Anna, thank you so much for joining us. I reckon next time we talk, you might be live. So that will be exciting, and we'll talk about how your launch went. So maybe we'll wait till you've got a couple of episodes out and about so that you can, share how that whole experience has gone.
Perfect. That sounds great. So I think it's August the 2nd is going to be launch date. So,
okay, brilliant. Exciting. Okay, we'll talk to you next time, Anna.
Okay, thanks, KB.
Are you a podcaster who has been podcasting for a few months, you're over the tech hurdle, You've cleared the starting hurdle and now you're kind of wondering, what next? How do I ensure my podcast craft is developing? How do I connect more with my audience and create a community around my brand? How do I connect with more influencers and develop lasting relationships with them? Well, my dear, Podcast Empire is the membership community for you. For $37 a month or $370 a year, you will get access to me and an intimate tribe of podcasting entrepreneurs. You'll get sharp strategy, laser-focused customer targeting, and epic brand building through the platform of your podcast. We do this through accountability with monthly goal setting, highly practical and tiny bite-sized trainings. We just looked at podcast rebrands and solo formats, and hot seat reviews of member podcasts. To see more and join, go to www.podcastempires.com. Join the empire. Today's episode really demonstrated the layers and complexity to the different decisions that you'll make when embarking on podcasting to build your brand. So my tip for the newbie is to write all your thoughts down. It sounds simple, but so much stuff goes through your head. It's really important to try and capture your thinking so that you can see it evolve. What's so interesting in looking back at where Anna was is that I know how much has changed for her since starting the show. There were kernels of insight in things that she said in our interviews, but nothing was really clear. So she really needed to start the process in order to work some of that stuff out. And it's only through the value of us recording it that we can look back and go, wow, did you know that you kind of said that, but now it's become the most important thing. This is why I provide worksheets in PodWell, because I believe it's really important to put stuff on paper or record it in an audio file, because it's so important to capture this exploratory process, and the process of capturing it will help you process it. And for the more experienced podcaster, it's time to stop and assess where you're at with your podcast. How well is it growing your audience, your influence, the attention you're getting, your community, your advocates? Look at your download numbers for sure, but it's also more important to look at your engagement. What action are your listeners taking, if any? Is it the kind of action you want? Are your shows highly targeted to your target market? If these questions make you shudder as you can't answer them with conviction, you might want to consider a listener survey to get a better read on your listener community. And listener surveys will be a mini training in Podcast Empire in the first couple of months of 2017.
Hey, we've loved contributing to your empire building today. Please share us with a fellow empire builder so that we can help them too. Thank you to Luke at The Wellness Pro for production and editing, the Virtually Holistic Hub for show notes and admin support, to our guest, and to you, our most important listener. You should also check out my other podcast, Lady Boss Chats, where Elle Roberts and I chat all things Lady Boss life. You'll feel like you've just pulled up a cozy armchair with your biz bestie. Find us in your favourite podcast app or at theladybossproject.com.